Well, welcome again, Eli. We get to do another vital conversation here.
So excited to be here. I love these Wednesdays in particular.
Yeah, I do too. And today, the axiom we're discussing is Doctrine of Signatures,
Woohoo!
which is really kind of complicated sometimes if you think about it, right? It's really deep and complicated. So we'll try to, I don't know. This is exciting where this conversation is going to go because it could go so many different ways with this one. So
Yes.
yeah. So let me set the stage of why we're talking about axioms, what axioms are, how this conversation started with Dr. Jim Sensenig many years ago. So Jim has this beautiful quote that we keep quoting in NMI. Is he says, naturopathic medicine is based on universal principles that are true and hold true for all time. We don't have to change what we're doing for the 21st century because the same rules and laws that apply to nature and the natural process of healing are immutable. So that's what the basis is here. And through the years, Jim and Eli and Jared and many of us, we talk about these laws of nature that Lindlar has laid out pretty well in his book, except they're all over the place. And so they've never been really consolidated into a full, comprehensive, more linear way of thinking about these laws or rules. And so when I started working with Jim on these, he was adamant about flushing these out, that there's more to naturopathic medicine than what we've already laid down. And I brought that out at one of the vital gatherings. I did an email or PowerPoint presentation, and laid them out as far as we knew. And we've added a couple more, but at the time there were 11. I think I now got 13. I keep going back and forth between 12 and 13. So, but we're going to go through at least 11 or 12 of them through this entire year. So once a month, we're going to talk about each one of them. And so today is the doctrines of signatures. One thing that we always want to bring back is Lindlar's nature cure philosophy, that there are three causes of disease. One is lower vitality, two is abnormal composition of blood and lymph, and three is the accumulation of waste matter, morbid materials, and poisons. Then what you do, knowing the causes of disease, then you know what modalities and things you can do to correct those. And we talk about those as the horses, the 12 horses, that all those modalities and things that we can do to drive the vital force to healing. So keeping that in mind as we go through these axioms, the axioms are the laws or the rules or the foundation that naturopaths work with that don't change. These are forever there. They're the way the world works. And we need to understand how the world works so we can work with them instead of against them. So these axioms are things that we can't change. And sometimes we don't like them. Sometimes we wish they were different, but it's just the way they are. And so knowing that, then we can use our modalities with them. And they inform the science. This is like, right, Eli, this is like the information that makes us observe the world and use the world's observation as our scientific method.
I agree.
That's what I love about it, right?
Yes. Yes. Someone asked me the other day if the axioms are like the laws of nature. And I said, yes, but they are, it's different than the laws of nature in my mind. It is the laws of it is how the world works around us. And but how we use them, apply them, how we observe them, and what we do with those observations is what sets them apart from just the laws of nature.
Yeah, it's like we have gravity and we all deal with gravity, and we have to have gravity or we fly off the planet. So it's just a good thing. Otherwise we just,
But what do you do with the law of gravity? What does it mean? Like, right?
Right.
It is a law of nature, and it could be an axiom, the law of gravity, but then what?
Right. It's the then what. So how do you apply that? And that's what's neat about going through these axioms is we can use things like the law minimum dose, the law minimum, the axiom of minimum, the axiom of suppression or health as balance. These are how you take these world laws and use them for the healing process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I had a couple quotes here. There was, from my slides, I'm just going to go back from the Vital Gathering PowerPoint I did. Jim had a couple really neat quotes, and Bill Mitchell did too, that I grabbed and used for that PowerPoint. Jim said, anything physical expresses itself in its higher order of intelligence. And it's the first law of Hermes. He says, as above, so below. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Bill Mitchell said, that which touched the plant formed the plant. Light touched it, and this became adjacent evolution. Where this guy came from, I don't know how he just brought all that down into Bill Mitchell was so amazing with his thinking and his energy like that. Jim's view was this relates to the concepts of consciousness, prayer, intention, spirituality. My view is different about the law of signatures. I was trained by Cascade Anderson Geller, who was an amazing herbalist. She taught at National NCNM when I was a student there. And she taught us that the law of signatures relates to how a plant communicates with us and helps us. So she had a Native American view of the way the plant was speaking to you. And that an example would be like how St. John's wort, Hypericum, is used to treat the nervous system and nerve injuries. If you look at the plant comes up and the stems dissect out like nerves on the spinal cord. And it's really interesting to look at a plant and look at how it can look like parts of the human body or parts of an organ that it actually is used to treat. So that's how I understood the law of signatures as taught by Cascade. So we know that like indigenous people can tell the difference between different forms of cat's claw. Cat's claw, one form is highly toxic and will kill you like this. And the other one is medicinal. And an indigenous person can walk through and go, no, don't harvest that plant, but it's this one over here you can have. And yet to a botanist, they look identical. A botanist cannot tell the difference between these plants. You have to run the plant through a mass spectrometer to determine which is the toxic alkaloid in this plant and which one is safe. But an indigenous person can find it.
Isn't that interesting?
There's something there, right? It's something that you're attracted to as a healer, and you if you pay attention and you listen to these plants, I say it listening because I'm auditory, but you can hear it, you can feel it, you can, it's just like I picked this little flower this morning out of my garden. This is one of the things I love. This plant, it's a little sweet William. It's a mini carnation, and the smell, that to me, that smell is just like heaven. I don't know what it is about that little plant. I really like that little plant. So sometimes you're just attracted to these things, and there's maybe it's just the smell, but maybe it's the way it looks, the way it's growing. Each plant's different too. You can have the same species next to each other and they're different. So it's really about resonance and how these plants and these things around us work with us. Bill Mitchell, there was another quote here. He says, the first form of information, of energy on Earth is plants. Let me read that again. The first form of information of energy on Earth is plants. Waveform of light became mass form of the chloroplast. Waveform of light became mass form of chloroplast. Wow.
It organized itself. And it organized itself into a shape and into a function that allowed it to become part of any number of different ways that plants express themselves. But at the core, those plants that rely on chloroplast couldn't do it without the chloroplast. Bill Mitchell was amazing. He reminds me of Einstein. He asked questions that were not complex questions necessarily, but the answers to those questions were profound. But you have to ask the question first, right? Like Einstein said, well, what happens when a molecule vibrates? Which is, I think, directly related to the doctrine of signatures.
Yes.
What happens when a molecule vibrates? Well, it vibrates at a particular frequency.
Right.
And it affects molecules around it who are attracted or not. And then they all start to vibrate at a particular frequency. And those molecules vibrating at that frequency form a shape. And eventually we can see that shape. And in that shape, there's a lot of information in the shape and the function and the language and the sound. Because I think if we had the capacity, we could hear plants singing all around us. I believe you could hear the human body's song. And if it's not well, it sounds like an orchestra out of tune. And when it's well, it sounds like a song. Right? So to me, this is all doctrine of signatures. It's fractal. It's a pattern. And right, it carries meaning. Like a walnut, which happens to be really good for the brain. It looks like a brain.
It's like a brain. Right. It's brain food. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
My first semester of biology in college, because I didn't go to high school. I left in 9th grade, part of my running away journey. But my first biology class in college, my professor said it was, we were talking about doctrine of signatures. He was giving us basic science stuff. And he said, I hope none of you fall into the trap of this really ridiculous thing that they call the doctrine of signatures, where you look at how something is shaped and you decide how it's supposed to be used in medicine. And that is such a reductionist, mechanistic way of understanding doctrine of signatures. That's not what it's about at all. It's about resonance.
Right.
In my opinion.
It is about resonance. And you can, just like, why do I resonate with this little plant? I don't know, but I really, there's a resonance with plants. There's a resonance with nature. There's just, and we know
water.
All of this with forest bathing and grounding and all the things we do. There's a resonance. And if you're quiet, if you get really quiet in your mind, because your mind can change that resonance. If you just sit with it and you just be with it, you can feel it, or you can hear it, or you can be a part of that, which is really amazing. And that's where Bill Mitchell would say, I don't know if you ever, Eli, had the chance to sit with him at a lecture when he would pass around herbs and he'd have you take them. Yeah, and he'd say, take this plant, take hawthorn, go get a hawthorn berry, pick it from the tree and sit under the hawthorn and eat the hawthorn berry and just feel what it does to you. You know, that's, he says, you have to experience the plant. Go experience that plant. And I started doing that years ago after Bill, you know, because I thought, well, that's a cool way to think about it. Because, you know, you don't, when you're just sitting in botany class, you're not doing that, right? And so I started doing that. And you can really feel these plants. Is just incredible, incredible feeling. When I go backpacking now, we were up in the Sierras with my daughter and her husband and kids, my grandkids, and we were backpacking. And this woman and her husband come by, and obviously they hike this trail a lot. And they go, oh, she said, did you see those lilies? They're just starting to bloom. And I'm like, I don't know what plants are around here, but that sounds cool. And so as I'm hiking around, I'm like, oh my God, there's one of those lilies she's talking about. And suddenly, as I'm hiking, you could almost see them opening up, right? And when we came back down the trail, they were all open in the sunshine. And I'm like, oh my God, I can actually hear them. I could hear them. They were like singing across the whole meadow. It was like, oh my God, it was incredible. It was incredible. So cool. It was really neat. And, you know, these plants have a timing. They have a way that they open up with the sunshine or the heat. And the bees know that too, because at certain times of the day, there isn't nectar produced. It's only a certain time of the day, or the pollen's only released a certain time of the day. You know, that's why bees go to mullen first thing in the morning. They don't go later. They go first thing in the morning when the dew is still on the plant. And so there's this rhythm and this method, or what is that? It's just that energy that these plants have. Yeah.
It's their resonance, right? They're speaking, they're communicating. So, you know, I'm on this journey of learning how to becoming Cherokee, right? I feel the blood. It's calling me. It has been for a while. I ended up here in Cherokee country, and there's this guy named Gus, and Gus is a medicine man. They don't have shamans in the Cherokee tribe. They have medicine men and they have medicine women. And Gus is also a storyteller, which it's a lot of the medicine people are storytellers, and they're telling the story of how did something come to be in the world. Well, last week, so it's very rainy here this year, much more water than normal. And he is out looking for cane. And with the canes, he makes musical instruments. And he gives them to his patients. So he makes it. He sings the song into the flute that the plant sang to him before he harvests it. And then he gives it to his patients to play that as part of their healing journey. So I was so excited that we were talking about Doctrine of Signatures today, because the cane, the river cane, is very good for the respiratory system. They made medicine from it for hundreds, probably thousands of years. And it's a tube, and air flows through it. And when river cane is growing, it makes noise, like audible noise. You can hear the wind through the canes and the different pitches and stuff. But Gus will go and he'll sit with the river cane, and he will listen to the songs, because some of that river cane makes better medicine than other. and he harvests the ones that call to him. And he, it's not a direct tie into Doctrine of Signatures, except that it ends up being good for the respiratory system. And it's in so many ways, not just because you chop it up and you make a tea out of it. The whole plant serves to help with the respiratory system in one form or another.
Man, how amazing is that?
If you ever come visit, I'm going to introduce you to Gus, because he will drag us out there and make us just sit somewhere and talk to the plants.
Yeah. Oh, that is so cool. Isn't that neat that he's carrying that on? Did he learn that from an
He's
elder?
full-blood Cherokee, and comes from a long line of medicine people, medicine women, and medicine men. But he describes his knowledge not so much as what he was necessarily taught, but what he inherited. Some part of his DNA is awake, that is asleep in others. And because it's awake, it has created receptors and a sensory and perception of something that people walking around every day just can't see. They just can't see it yet.
Right. Yeah. I think Bill Mitchell had a good way of awakening that in people who are open to it. It's like sit with the plant, taste the plant, smell the plant, get to know the plant. And then you'll understand how to use the plant. Right.
And it's all of its different forms, because you make homeopathic remedies from those plants, and you can see it all through the doctrine of its signature.
Absolutely. That brings me to pulsatilla. I had the opportunity, I can't remember where we were backpacking. We go on summer backpacks every year. I was up in the mountains. I think it was in Idaho, in the Sawtooth Mountains. And we're at elevation pretty high. I think we were like maybe 9,000 feet, 8,000 feet. And I've seen pulsatilla before, but I hadn't seen like that pulsatilla. It was incredible. Like there is this rocky sheer cliff, right? Where the little pikas and the little animals run around and chirp at you and dive down into their rock holes. And there was these mounds of these beautiful balloon flowers, right? These pulsatilla. And when a rain would come, a storm would come, and they would close up and they would just bear with the wind and everything. And the storms come and go really fast there in the mountain. And then I would walk along, and then the cloud would dissipate and the sun would come out, and poof, they pop up back open. And they are so changeable. That is just like the remedy, right? Yes. They change so flippin' fast.
Yes.
One moment you can hardly see them, next minute they're open. And if you go back and look at that plant again, we had one in the herb garden at NCNM in Portland. And every day I go look at that plant, it would look totally different.
Yes.
You know, one day you just saw the little leaves. Next thing, hey, it had a, bunch of flowers. And the next day they're open. Next day they're gone. And they're just gone. Yeah. And it changes so fast, just like the remedy.
Yeah.
So it was when I see a person with these symptoms, like, changing all over, it's like, well, that's pulsatilla, right? And they want to be outside, and they want the fresh air blowing on them, and it's just like the plant.
Yes. And they want attention.
And they want attention. And they get it, because like they're like gorgeous, and they're like, you cannot not notice them.
Yes.
Other plants you can kind of walk by and go, oh, there's a little whatever, but they're very noticeable. Yeah.
That is cool.
Yeah. So that's my experience with pulsatilla. So that was really cool. That was really cool.
So how does the Doctrine of Signatures guide your clinical practice? Because I'm trying to think of ways that it guides mine. it's this knowledge that I just keep accumulating, right? When I hear
Right.
a person and I see them, I observe them, they tell me things, things will come into my mind. And I'm sure it's because of this association I've made between the plant and how it is, not just plants. Everything has a doctrine of, so that maybe that's something. We're talking a lot about plants.
Talking a lot about
Plant.
plants because I think that's our quickest connection with it.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
But everything natural on the planet, I believe, has a signature to it. And you have to understand that signature to know how to use it. But I'm trying to think, how does it guide me, or how do I use this in practice? And it actually, I can't come up with a concrete example right now, but it does guide the choices I make in the plant or in the food or in a way of living, of the kind of water I want them to interact with. I'm just wondering for you, how does it guide you?
Well, I guess it's just from a lot. I think of it more with plants in homeopathy. And I think it's just from a lot of experience sitting with people and listening to their stories. Like when it was Cascade told me, hawthorn is used not only for the heart, but it's used for the broken heart. And so, and I remember Bill Mitchell saying something about that too, that it's used to fill the heart again, to heal that emotional part.
Mm-hmm.
So I often, when I hear a person's story, if I get that sense that there's a broken heart, they may not have heart symptoms, they might not have hypertension, they might not have any arrhythmias or any concerns like that. But if I sense there's a broken heart, I'm going to give them hawthorn and I'm going to give them tincture.
Mm. Oh,
So
that's cool.
So that's the kind of thing that that is really hard to teach that to young doctors. It's hard to describe to a preceptor that I have, for instance, if I gave this because I think they had a broken heart.
Right.
It's
Right.
and they go, what? Okay, that was weird. And so it's hard to relate that that connection, but it's just a sense that you get. Sometimes I just get a sense that this person had an old injury, and they mention it briefly in their history. It's like, what? They need a 1M arnica. I don't know what that is, but it's just something that I just have to go get for them. Right. So I think, again, if you listen and sit with it, or you're aware, you just have to open up and be aware of the possibility of how to use all of our modalities, on a deeper level. Right. So get out of the pharmacological mind of, oh, this has this active constituent and it's going to work on this metabolic pathway. And this is why I'm going to give this nutraceutical. Maybe that's what the person needs. But on an energetic level, is there something else there? Is there something else that and maybe you don't consciously know it, maybe you subconsciously know it, but don't ignore that. If you have a subconscious, it's like, I think they need, 1M arnica, give them a 1M arnica. You don't have to have rationale to give it in a nutraceutical way, right? I think that's how it informs me, and I think that's the intuitive part. Jim would always talk about.
But it's based still on energy. Even intuition is based on a resonance, a frequency, something that's vibrating that you in particular have picked up on. You just have to trust that, right? I've had to learn this myself. So, I was MD, PhD bound before I went into naturopathy, even with a grandma who used herbs and grew her own food. And like, that was just part of the way you live life to me.
Yeah.
But there was this element of life that was so important to me because I see us all as connected. I understand that our physical bodies are an illusion that separate us. Like it's just the flow of light and electrons and energy, and it's ordered and it has meaning and it works, and it works in a more intelligent way than any human is ever going to be able to come up with in their earthly brain. And there's a level of resonance there that carries information. I mean, the remedies carry it on this level, right? Anything potentized carries it on that level. Well, gosh, think about it on the macro level of a growing plant. Wow, that's got to be like 10 times the volume that a little homeopathic remedy brings with it. And it's a pattern. It's a signature. So you have to learn that. Do you know there's a doctor in Philadelphia? He's an old-timey DO, and he only prescribes herbs to his patients that they can feel when they hold it in their hand.
Oh, seriously?
Seriously. And they don't know what it is that he puts in their hand.
Wow.
And it induces a tingle, or it just pulls their thoughts to their hand, or there may be warmth. There's all different ways. He wrote a whole little short story thing about it. And he has phenomenal clinical success. But this is, I think, the use of the doctrine of signatures. There's a signature there, and it's the person is picking up on it. And then, he's got to at least start. He's got to get the gross, right? These are the 5 that might be good for you. But
Sure.
Instead of overkill, he does, that elegant minimum for maximum formula. Isn't
Right.
that cool? I think that's the use of the doctrine of signatures, real life, real time.
Does he just have the dry plant and he gives it to them?
He has the dry plant, but he also, apparently, the entire wall of his office is full of little plants that he keeps in little pots and stuff like that. So I think if he's got it living, he'll give them the live plant to hold. But when he doesn't, he'll use dried herbs.
Oh, isn't that super cool?
Yeah. I've always wanted to go on a road trip and meet him, just to sit in his office.
Eli, you should do that and record him.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Say, hey, can we just record you and what you do? Yeah, you got to
That's a
do
good
that.
idea.
Because
Yeah.
that's a really neat way to do that. That's a cool idea. How far away is he from you?
Oh, a ways, but I know a few people in Philly. They're both nature paths. I might reach out to them and say, would you think about doing an interview with this guy and recording it for me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that would be super neat to share. Yeah. Old timey Dio, huh? Gosh.
So this is like what's that stuff? Ayahuasca. You know what I'm talking about? It's a psychedelic.
Yeah.
So the shamans who collect that have said, oral tradition, oral history, that it is the plant's shape and smell and how it communicates to them that they know which plants to pick to provide or to produce this ceremonial drink. Like, I don't know how helpful this is for everybody in clinical practice. Like, the doctrine of signatures, there isn't a list. There is a list, but it's not a growing list that I know. No one's adding to it, are they?
I don't know that they are.
So there was a list, a compilation of things put together over the years based on the doctrine of signatures, which did draw a lot of criticism from mainstream medicine, who believes in none of this stuff anyway.
Right.
Of when it's shaped in a certain way, when it's structured in a certain way, when it lives in a certain way, it corresponds to something in the human, and it can be used for healing in the human. That's like the bird's eye view of it. We're just getting deeper and deeper and deeper into the different trails, the different
Different energetics
yes.
of the plants or the environment or yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's very different when you take, we'll go back to plants. When you take a plant like echinacea and you buy it at the hardware store and it's been propagated a particular way, right, for mass production, and you take it home and you plop it in your flower bed and think, I got echinacea. This is really great. That is very different from echinacea in the wild, grown in its own environment on the prairie, in that grassland. That's very different. And so, and in a way, I look at the plants that I've purchased and put on my farm here. I have 2 hawthorn trees. They're ornamental hawthorn trees. They're not native trees. And I've plopped them down into an environment that I hope they live. I hope they like it. But then I look at, we have native hawthorns here. They're black hawthorns. And that's a total different plant. And they like it on the edge of the forest over here.
Mhm.
And they're very prolific. People don't like them because they're really thorny and they just cut them down. But, we don't know how long these trees have been there. I look at this one and I'm thinking, that's got to be at least a 50 to 100-year-old hawthorn tree. I don't know how long that plant has been in that ground there,
Mhm.
and to think that we can just go rip it out and it's been there longer than we've been around. That's what breaks my heart is when I see those things happen, is we just assume, oh, that tree will grow back. No, it won't.
No, not always. Sometimes that was it.
That was it. That was its stand. There's a patch of snowberry that my honeybees love. Snowberry honey, by the way, is the best. So when that snowberry blooms, I love to grab that honey. That's when I like to harvest the honey. But the snowberry bushes, you see some around in the trails around here that are maybe a couple feet high or something. This snowberry bush, it's 5 feet tall. It's about 6 feet around.
Wow.
I have no idea how old that snowberry is, but oh my God, it's amazing. And that's what my honeybees go to.
Mhm.
So if I didn't have that snowberry bush, my honey wouldn't taste the way it tastes.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Which is medicine in and of itself.
Right. Right.
Do you have a resource for learning about the doctrine of signatures that you like? Like you always have some great old book on your shelf.
I went looking and I glanced through all my tabs in Linlar's last night, and he really doesn't talk about the doctrine of signatures. I really couldn't find it. I went looking briefly for a couple others. I didn't have a chance to pull out all my herb books. So I don't have a great source other than the one that I pulled up for the PowerPoint, which was a really incredible book. And I think maybe you told me about this book, or somehow you mentioned something and I found this book. I don't remember how I found this book. It's called Restoring the Soul of the World.
Mm-hmm.
Did you tell
Yes.
me about that book?
Yes.
It's incredible. So
Yes.
I did a couple quotes from it's David Fidler is the author, Fideler, David Fidler, Restoring the Soul of the World. And he has a couple of things I pulled out here. Let me read these to you. Which way does it go? Which order? Yet, even within our own nature, in the unconscious regions that join our psyche with the greater soul of the world, an active organic power is at work, maintaining the unity of the organism and the creative unfolding energies of life. Mic drop,
I know,
that's
right?
I print this out and I have it. Just, it's like, how else can you say that? I mean, even within our own nature, in the unconscious regions that join our psyche with the greater soul of the world, an active organic power is at work, maintaining the unity of the organism and creative unfolding energies of life.
That to me is the vital force. That is the vital force. It's smart, it's knowledgeable, and its goal is to be in its best state of health or resonance.
Yeah.
Always
Striving for that, always going for that, always wanting that, always trying to recorrect and bring the body into balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a good book.
He says, we live within the pattern of systemic, here's the pattern. We live within the pattern of systemically unfolding, self-organizing cosmic organism that is finely tuned for the emergence of life. That's the, that's the vitality, that's the vital force, and that's the unifying principle. And it's the patterns that we see that unfold, that organize life with that resonance. He also says the human psyche embodies 3.8 billion years of living Earth's evolutionary heritage. We have evolved to communicate and understand all the beings around us. All the beings around us, from the water rushing down the creek to the rocks, to the way the sun shines, to the way the stars are. My father always said, you should only eat the plants that live in this space where you're at, under this sun, under this moon, under these stars.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you eat plants that are grown under different stars, under different sun, they're not in resonance with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Jim told me about the Doctrine of Signatures. We were having this impromptu conversation one afternoon. He was struggling a little bit with some people in his family, and he said to me, just out of the blue, he said, this whole Doctrine of Signatures thing, I think I finally figured something out. And I was like, okay, what'd you figure out, dude? He's like, we are also have a signature. We are the caretakers of this planet. We have evolved so that we can be sentient and understand how it's supposed to come together. This is our signature. We are medicine for this planet. And I will never forget that idea, because humans always have a tendency to step out of the world and look at the world around us like we're watching some movie. But we've forgotten that we're part of that movie. And what is our part? What does it mean? And I thought about that for weeks after he said it to me. We have our own signature. We have our own place we fill. And he really thought it was as a caretaker. As healers, to heal this planet, because now we know we need to, and we know how to. Right. Well, I started off in biology in college to save the endangered species. I wanted to be a wildlife biologist because I thought that's how we can save the planet, if I save these animals. And then I realized through my college courses that I had it all wrong, that I can't save the animals if I don't save humans first, because it's the only way. If humans understand, then we can save the planet, we can save the animals. So that's really what I started switching directions. Yes. So. Yes. Ooh, there's a lot to heal. The human psyche is what needs to be healed, and then the physical body will follow suit. Absolutely, our frequency is all messed up. Yep. On purpose. I think it's on purpose. Here's my little conspiracy streak. Okay. If you keep us agitated and unable to focus on our purpose here, and you keep everybody looking for their purpose. What's the reason? What's the reason? Well, the reason is very obvious. It's very clear. But you can't distract everybody with all of these frequencies and noise and conveniences and toxins and poisons. And they do that because they earn this make-believe stuff we call money and live a life of luxury so they don't have to plant and get their fingernails dirty. Okay.
Right.
Great. But that's completely unnatural and not part of our biological signature, I think.
Right. Right. We've created this artificial way of being. And now with AI, oh my gosh.
Oh, man.
You know, that's going to be swaying our opinions, our thoughts, our, we won't know what's real, what's not real. And it's already happening. So just makes it all the more clearer that we really have to hold on to these foundational things that we know and trust and can rely on.
Yes.
Yes. And people are looking for this every day. I hear it with my patients. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. My medical doctor doesn't listen to me, or I didn't know that was on my lab report. They never even told me this. How many times am I hearing that right now? So the medical profession is failing people on such a ginormous level, but they don't even know what they don't know. And so it's a hell of a lot of education to try to, educate our patients as to what natural living and natural laws of health are.
It won't change as long as medicine is organized for profit.
Yeah.
As long as medicine is organized for profit, as long as it's run for profit, it can't change, because medicine should not be profitable. It should be enough for you to earn a living and enough for you to earn enough into your age, the healers, into your older age. But we're talking massive, massive dollars that people are benefiting from the illness of other people, that as long as that's true, we're always going to be fighting this fight.
Yeah. I mean, the pharmaceutical industries are just making incredible bucket loads of money on these drugs. And look at the opiate crisis we're in. That was all for profit.
Mm-hmm.
All for profit. And I just saw a lady yesterday, chronic back pain. Geez, guess what? She's on an opiate.
Yes.
I'm like, well, how do we, now she's a drug addict and she doesn't even know it, right? These people don't know it.
No, sugar addict, drug addict, TV addicts. They're so disharmonious inside that people are looking for anything and everything to take their mind off of that feeling that something's not right. Something is not right.
Right.
But they don't know what.
Right.
Because they've been trained since birth to eat Fruit Loops.
Right.
I mean, seriously.
I know. At least we had Sesame Street. Now that was pretty good. But do they have Sesame Street anymore? I don't know.
I don't know.
Gilligan's Island and Sesame Street, I tell you,
that's all you need.
That's it. Professor Marianne,
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on a tangent. But I think these axioms are really cool to talk about, and the foundational part of what we do. And Jim always said we have something that defines naturopathic medicine more than the other things we've laid down as naturopaths, because other practitioners can use those things too. Medical doctors can claim that they're doing the same thing for their patient.
Therapeutic order,
exactly. Yes. So this is diving deeper. This is what is really underneath the foundation, or I like to say the bedrock of naturopathic medicine. This is the core, and this is why we love to talk about this stuff, because it's just amazing to go through and see how it affects our lives and our practices and our patients.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. I wonder if anybody has any comments or questions in our last 7 minutes.
Yeah, we got a few minutes. Anybody? I haven't been looking at the chat here. I don't see anything yet. Well, the next one is minimum dose, number 6. We're halfway through ish.
Ooh, already?
Minimum dose, yeah. So that's going to be a good one. The one I'm looking at next in adding, Eli, is the law of attraction or resonance. And I know that resonance and attraction, we've kind of touched on it, but I don't know that we've really nailed it down. And I don't see, some of these flow into the others, right? And so law of attraction, like attracts like, law of harmony. Linlar has tons of deals on law of harmony, attraction, resonance. So sometimes I think that's part of signatures, and sometimes I think it's part of minimum dose, and sometimes I think it's part of individuality. I don't know. I think I'm going to have to pull that one out as a separate axiom.
The law of minimum?
The law of attraction.
Oh, the law of attraction. Yes. I think the law of attraction is what you get when you put all the axioms together. Like, so y'all are going to think I'm weird. I'm just going to say this. I think when we think, we create a auditory, don't think ear, but we create a message that flows in light and electrons, and it's either a beautiful, harmonious, in balance, or it is disruptive and explodes things and breaks things and alters DNA. And I think this law of attraction is, because it takes a lot of the other axioms, a lot of the other laws,
right,
to be in place. But once it is, that's when you attract those, those bacteria that want to live in a warm, fuzzy environment in your gut and do good things for you, because you're loving on them. They're full of love. Or when you are so disrupted and you've eaten bad things, it's creating something that attracts things that are not so good for you. That's how I sort of think of it, but that's, scratch of the surface. So,
well, then maybe it's good that it's the 12th, that it's at the end. Okay. Yeah. I've got,
we're not there yet. You got lots of time to still
I
think
got a little
about
bit of time to flesh that out through Linlar. Again, I'll read the book.
Dr. Petersburg says, I can make an argument that the homeopaths are doing Doctrine of Signatures to a new level. I agree.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think homeopathy brings it to that whole nother level. And because we've actually proven it on people, the most scientific medicine out there, we know how these things act and what symptoms they emit. So we use that doctrine of signature to match the remedy to the person. Vice versa. Right. I think so. I think that's definitely that. And then the next one, minimum dose. I mean, that's homeopathy right there, right?
Right. Or one. I mean, the eclectics too had that. One other thing I want to say about Doctrine of Signatures, I think we even see this in rocks. So if you look at marble and you look at how marble is at its most basic level, how it's put together and how it stacks on itself molecularly, you end up with something in the world that you can see that looks like marble at a very microscopic level. Does it make so? If you look at hawthorn and you look at the molecules of hawthorn, you're going to see it arranged in a way. When y'all get off this call, go look at electron microscopy and pick whatever you want. hawthorn, like they haven't done all the plants, but find some that you are familiar with. Who says this? Psyche and Structure. Yes, by Peter Tuminello. Takes minerals and how, yes. So at a very, very, very small level, you can see the structure that you see express itself in the physical world. You can see with your eyes. And for me, this is the signature of every single thing on earth, from its smallest form to its largest form. And it informs us of how we can use this to restore health in our struggling human species right now and the planet as a whole.
Yep. Save the humans. Yeah.
Maybe. Do we really
Maybe.
want to save all the humans? Can we make a list of like 112 and just
Oh, well, I know there's those out there. Oh my goodness.
This was a great conversation today.
This was a lot of fun.
Woo-woo, but that's okay. That's really
okay. Good. Yeah. No, thanks, Eli. This was brilliant. Thanks for being here and doing these, you guys. And thanks for everybody who helps us put this on. I know it takes a bit of a village to make it happen. So yeah. All right. I guess we're done. So bye. Till next time. Thanks much.
See you next month.